It's been fun setting this all up, working with Paul Grill and the Infosol people and my group. Doing this as a virtual, we've always had great success with the user group meetings, so it's really touching to me that we get such great attendance for this, even though it's virtual. I know we're not doing the interacting that we like, but nevertheless. So I'm going to be covering today is the analysis tab, your best friend. I'm going to pop a quick slide up. Let me share my screen first, I guess. Better do that. Share it so you can see it. Okay. So you'll see my contact information is there if you want to write that down. If you want to do any follow-up relative to available handouts and stuff from today, you'll have to contact me via email. That's the only way. Or, of course, via phone, but email is the best way in order for me to respond back to that as well. So leave that there for a minute. So we're going to talk about the analysis tab. It's one of the 5 major tabs that across the top, or the ribbons as we call them from the Microsoft world. And it's one of the most powerful features. From my view, it's one of the most underutilized. Too many people, when you start building your reports, you forget about that and you just kind of get some columns inserted into the report, but there's so much available to you that's so quick and easy to work with. So I'm going to do an abbreviated version in 30 minutes or less. I'll try not to get going too fast on it, but as we go through. So let's talk about the analysis tab. And let me get into Webby real quick here. Many of you have had an opportunity to see me over the last several months, some of the webinars I've done. So get logged in here real quick. We'll gen up a quick query so we have some data available to us. And it's been strange. I've been working in 4.3 so much with updates and stuff that it's nice to be back in 4.2 and with all the great functionality. We'll come in new. Let's pick our universe option as we're all used to doing. I'm running 4.2 SP7. I'll go to eFashion again. The boring eFashion universe that we all use. Let's make it easy. Let's do a year and a quarter and a state. And we'll do the measures, taking advantage of the HTML functionality, clicking on a folder to get all the objects in that folder group. Take the discount out, leave it like that. And let me collapse my little window here on the right side so I have the ability to see the right side. And we'll go with this. And let's basically talk about all of the different things that are available to you. Really cool. First of all, from a report development perspective, when I do a 3-day training class, it's a lot of information. Paul's organization the same way. It's a lot to digest, and we tend to go overboard. We tend to try to do everything at once right up front. So I throw the block out there, and then I try to throw the analysis features and a bunch of other stuff on there, and we get ahead of ourselves and we get lost. If you could follow a step-by-step process and take your time in building it, for example, I've got my basic core columns all set to go. Maybe I want to do some formatting of some of the columns, whether it's format for the number or format for the display format, whatever the case may be. I want to do that and try to get all that laid out, get rid of columns that I don't want. For example, the margin column, maybe I don't want that one, so I'm going to drag it out, take it out that way, make sure I get a good hold of it. Chrome can sometimes be a little finicky with it. Looks like I got it now, up and over to remove it, because I changed my mind. If you get the block set up right up front, it makes your life a lot easier. Otherwise, you're going up and playing with some of the other settings up here, different options and so on, and you get lost. So we're going to go right to the analysis tab. To me, it's the single most important tab. It's the most powerful tab, and it's what gives Webby its robustness, its power, the ability to apply really cool functionality, combination of Excel and other products that you may have worked with along the way as well. So what I'm not going to do in this session today is talk about input controls. That's a separate session. I'll be doing something using input controls later this afternoon. The group button we'll look at. Conditional formatting, again, it's part of the analysis tab. There it is. There it is hidden, but there it is nevertheless. These are all the most significant features that are available to you. Over on the right, we got our functions I'm going to click on as well that give you your standard sum, count, average, min, max, and percent, and so on. So as I look at the report, number one thing we always like to do in our reports is basically apply a break so I can group things. So I'm going to take the quarter column out. Another way to get rid of that, of course, is a right-click delete. We'll do a little house cleaning. So I don't need that one in this particular situation. You'll notice my background color for the default report block is different now. It's no longer blue with white lettering for the name of the object. Something that came up in 6 or 7. I can never remember which service pack had which change. But if you're using an existing report and duplicating it, it will carry whatever that default was. You don't have to worry about that as well. So right out of the gate, most important thing we want to do is to take our, in this case, we'll take our year column, and we're going to use the infamous break. There's three options up here that stand out above all the rest: break, sort, and filter. The big three, I like to call them. Being from an automotive capital, Detroit, the big three comes up all the time. The big three in Webby reporting here in the analysis tab are breaking, sorting, and filtering. All right, I'm applying it locally to the block. Some of these will apply to certain charts, like filtering and so on, and sorting, but breaks don't always apply directly on the chart itself. So we're going to take the year column, and we're going to go up to the break, and by just clicking on it, it'll automatically apply a break. And lo and behold, you'll see I automatically get my break based on each year. I get a break header, I get a break footer, I get the infamous gap in between. If there's more than one break, I only get the gap on the highest level break, as you see right there, and there it is. Okay, so it did something else, and this is a relatively new feature in SP 6 or 7, automatic subtotals. That comes with the break. That's a brand new feature. I love it. The problem you have with it is it only gives you the subtotals and not the grand totals. Okay, at the very bottom you'd expect to see them, and you don't. Well, that's just one of the byproducts. We're working with my friend Samuel from the Paris development staff. What we discovered was if you go along the edge of the block because you're working a break, and you go to Format Table near the bottom because you want the entire block, there's a new feature that you're going to take advantage of called Table Footers. That's what you have to do to turn the grand total footer on at the very bottom, and lo and behold, there it is. Okay. Now, you know, with reference cells, I can reference this cell and create a new reference cell, like a single value variable here for the grand total, sales revenue, and grand total quantity sold, and all the subtotals and so on. But again, outside the realm of what we're doing, but just to give you an idea how far you can carry it. Okay, so little things like that enter into the picture. When you do create a break, sometimes you want to combine it with another feature. We're going to come back and look at managing breaks in a minute, but before we do that, you'll notice my years go 16, 17, 18, 19, kind of reverse order by default. Well, I'm going to use the sort feature, and under the sort option, I have ascending, descending, none to turn it off, or advanced. Advanced would be if you're going to do a custom sort. If I wanted the years in a particular random order, different than the alphabetic or whatever, you would do that. So we're going to do descending. By merely picking descending, now I get 19, and then 18, and then 17, and then 16, all the way down the line as we'd expect. So you'll see that the way sorting works and the way most of the functions on this toolbar work is they work in conjunction with the break. So if I were to turn the break off on year, now my states would do a straight alphabetic all the way through because there's nothing dictating how to break it up. So you can be sure most other functions you use, ranking works that way, your sorting and so on are all going to work within the context of the break, which is kind of the master of it all. Let's go back to manage breaks for a minute here. If you click the down arrow, we have manage breaks. We used to have manage sort, and they changed it to advanced, but that's okay. And some of the other ones, manage groups and so on, very consistent that way. Get used to this window and get comfortable with it. Unfortunately, in 4.3, it changes slightly. A little different way they display it over on the right side, but you still get the functionality. Let's review what some of the functionality here that's available. Did I want to turn the break header off? Do I want to turn the footer off? If I get rid of the footer, I have an interesting problem. Let's do that just for example's sake. Sorts applied automatically. So if I were to apply a footer to turn it off, it removes the footer, okay, and including the subtotals along with it as well. And there's no physical gap. I don't like that. From my view, that takes away, but you might like it. But if you go back to manage breaks, you have an alternative plan you could think about. You could say, well, if I'm going to do that, why don't I start each break value on a new page? I could do that here and split it up that way if I wanted to as well. Okay, but I want the break footer that's it to be in there, and I want to have it displayed. I can do a value-based break. This is a relatively new feature that was introduced. I'm going to say Service Pack 5 or 6. Again, I apologize for not remembering exactly. And in this particular example, with all the states that we have, most of our states are pretty 2 to 3 million range, but there's 3 states that stand out above all the rest, and it's New York, Texas, and California that are in the 9 to 12 or 15 million range. Well, maybe I don't want to break on every individual state, only just the big 3. So you have now that ability to do a value-based break by selecting there, selecting the values button, and you could select which, in this case, which year I want, but if I was doing it on the state column, it would be on which state that I would want it to break. And I would obviously organize these differently. I'd want to break it by state rather than year if I was going to do that, so it made more sense. Display options that also exist, let's take a quick look at that. Click the down arrow, And the most common option is called merge. So if there's duplicate values, i.e. the 2019 all the way down the line, I want it to merge in the middle of that each break group. And now there's my 2019 automatically merged into the middle. Okay. And again, I got the footer back on again, and there's my subtotals. By the way, if you want to turn the automated subtotals off, you go up here, and you have to go up to your functions on the interact side, on the function side rather, and for the sum button, if I click on the column, there's a new one here called default aggregation. If you uncheck that, that will turn it off. It will not give you the automatic subtotals. Of course, the grand total you had to do separate, and you could do it yourself. I could say uncheck it here, and then I'm going to apply it myself and do it there, and then you'll get your subtotals and your one single grand total as part of it all automatically. All right. There are other break features that are available. I won't cover them within the context of this session. And I think in the next webinar, or next Business Objects User Group meeting next week, I think I'm doing one on advanced break features where we're going to get a little bit more in depth, where we have a little bit more time, and we'll show you more of what you can do as well. Okay, so just to kind of pace it so we can get our good content in. So there's my break on year. I can't really break on state, but if I had another dimension in there, I could break on the higher levels if I wanted to as well. It doesn't matter positionally where they are either. There's a misconception that, well, your break's got to be your leftmost column and your non-breaks to the right. No, it doesn't have to be that way. That's how we typically are used to viewing things. No, it does not have to be that way. Okay. The other interesting thing, because I have a break on year with my states in between, this would be an ideal situation to look at another interesting function on the analysis toolbar called ranking. Now, many of you have been through my training, and there's a lot of you out there I saw on the list that have been. I always talk about, well, the ranking for a quick and dirty, it does a fine job. You've heard me say that many, many times. But the ranking there's also a function in the function library called rank, down in the, I think it's the numeric category near the bottom, and that allows you to control it more directly, and that's the one that I use all the time. But why don't we just take advantage for a simple ranking, and let's see what we can do right here. Ranking, like sorting, is going to work within any breaks that you have. Well, I already have a break. I'm breaking it on year, so whatever I do for ranking will be within. So logically, to rank the states would make sense. I have an old saying, you break on your higher level dimension and you rank on the lowest level or lower level for it to make logical sense. Break high, rank low. All right, so we'll use the ranking button. Just go up and click on it. It automatically invokes the ranking edit window, and it always defaults to 3. Okay? What if I don't want the top 3? What if I only want the top 2? I can click it down a level to 2, and notice the based on window. This is the area where people run into problems all the time with this button. They forget to do their homework and thoroughly check things out. So when you highlighted the state column, you told Webby up front, I want it ranked by state. If you highlighted the wrong one, you could change it here. Okay? But I don't want it based on margin. In fact, I don't even have margin in the report. It wouldn't even make sense. I want it to be based on sales revenue. Now, why did it do that? Well, Webby, when you ran the query and brought in all of your available objects, we had picked all the measures, well, 3 to 4 measures, I stand corrected. So what Webby does in the ranking window, it always says, okay, I'm going to look at all the ones you brought in, and I'm going to randomly pick one of those. So it picked margin. Nope, wrong one. I want it based on sales revenue. All right, that's what I want to look at. So I can do that. So now it does the top 3 within each break group. So for each year, I get only my top 3 states, okay, up to top 3, and depending on what totals we have and so on, or top 2 rather, as I selected. And if I wanted, I could edit the ranking and say, well, instead of doing it from the top end, maybe we want to do it from the bottom end and do a bottom instead. You can do a top and a bottom together in the report block. It's a little, can be a little confusing, but it will display it, so be careful. Maybe I want the bottom 4, but instead of sales revenue, we're going to base those on the quantity sold. Again, I could have picked margin, but margin is not being displayed in the report. So I could add it in or leave it out, but you want to typically rank on something you can see. Okay, so now I'm going to get the worst 4, the lowest to the next highest, to the next highest, to the next highest for that one. So I think I changed that one to 4, it looks like, yep. So I got my bottom 4 values out of there instead, okay, as an alternative way of doing it. Now sometimes you don't want to do it based on a count, you want to do it based on a percentage. So let's take a look at that and the way that works. We would pick top. For count, we're going to go in and we're going to change it to percentage. So now instead of a count value of top 3, bottom 3, maybe I want the top 50%. The moment you do that, it defaults the window and I need to make a correction and say I want the top 50%. And now you're converting it. and we'll go back to sales revenue. We have to be careful how we interpret this. I worked with other products, and what they would do is they would look at the measure, in this case sales revenue, and see which particular states touch that percentage, 50%, and they would show up. Webby does it differently. It looks at the total number of values for state, actual rows of data or unique values. There's 4. Okay, there's 8 total. So it does it based on the total count of how many total states there are, and then 50% would be the top 4. So it's very different than what many of you might be used to. And we'll do this to see that we get the top 50%, which is the top 4 out of the 8. And one of the questions I always get asked, and I'll show you this one real quick, they say, what if I want to see them all? Well, the tricky way to do that is you make it a top 100% or bottom 100%. You'll get all the values in either descending or ascending order, depending which one you pick. And now you get them all. The thing that I don't like about this, there's no ranking value, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. That's what I want to see. But I already gave you the ticket out on that one. Take a look at the rank function in the, I think it's numeric category. I always got to look at that one near the bottom of the function library list, and you can use the ranking function there, which has been simplified, and it'll give you whatever you want, and it will give you a count value to go with it automatically as well. So now let's go back and say, okay, let's remove the ranking. I don't want any more ranking. In the case of ties, you know, you'll see the tie values, which is correct. I often get questioned on that, and they said, well, how else can it handle it? There's no way to do it. Just watching golfing last week, and they do it the same way. If there's a number 1 and 2 number 2s, you skip 3 and go to 4. That's exactly what Webby's going to do as well. Remember, the ranking works in conjunction with the breaks. If I took the break off and did an overall ranking, I'd get the overall states, top 3, bottom 3, whatever it is I have to choose somewhere along the way. Okay. So now let's move over to one of my really, really cool features I like to talk about. I call it the hidden gem. This is an amazing feature called the group button. And if you that were old Deska users, I go back 23, 24 years, I remember the old desktop product. It had some really cool stuff, and Webby is almost 100% compliant, other than the slice and dice panel. Other than that, it's pretty much compliant. And we had the ability to group things, but it was kind of funny how you had to do it. And God forbid you had a single value you wanted to group, because it became a little more difficult, but you could do it. So what I need to do is I want to dynamically take all my states and regroup them into a region. All right. If all 50 states were there, you have more of an impact for it as well. You can do this for your dimensions. So I'm going to use the group button. And anybody in healthcare, it's a very big one in healthcare. The number one example that many of my customers have given me, and some of you are out there right now listening or in the training, is use it for diagnostic codes. If diagnostic codes are going to be regrouped and reclassified, you can dynamically change them, look at the effect, go back, regroup them a different way, change, run it again, look at the effect, and see what's going on as well. It's an amazingly powerful feature. Believe it or not, it came out in 4.1. Not 4.2, 4.1, a long time ago, along with Excel files and a couple other real neat little features as well. So let's see how the group works in action. This is great. This is a huge time saver. This saves you the time of building a complex if then else expression to group. And let me show you what I mean. We're going to pick the group button. It says give me a name for this because it's no longer going to be the state column. We're going to call it region. So we'll do a region column. New description boxes are appearing here, and for local variables, you now have the ability to put help text in there for those as well. Take advantage of it. And look how easy it is. This is one of the features that people will often hear me talk about in training classes. When I see a feature that Samuel and Gregory and the group have introduced, I always say, okay, let's see how intuitive it is, or is it? Let's see if we can figure out, as more of a light user, how to do things. So he said, well, I want to take California, so I'm going to check mark the 2 states I want to group together initially, and it could have been more than 2, California and Colorado, and we're going to hit the old group button, and we're going to say, well, that group I'd like to call West Coast, so I'm just going to type in West. Group. And what the heck, I can put Coast in there. I get for the little extra typing, C-O-A-S-T, and I do an OK, and now I've assigned those to a new group, just like that. Imagine if you were doing this with an if then else expression. I have region equal to if my state is in the list of values and inside parentheses, double quotes around the value literally spelled correctly with a semicolon separator. Who's going to remember all that? Who wants to remember all? Webby said, let me do that for you. So we'll take our next group, which is DC and New York and Massachusetts, We'll group those together, call it the Northeast. Those of you that have been in some of my training classes or other webinars, you might remember me calling this the Northeast debate, referring to it in a baseball context. The Washington and Yankees and the Red Sox, grouping them all together in their own separate category, far away from my Detroit, since they always beat us up. Notice those are now defined, and I said, well, let's take Florida and let's take Texas, and we'll group those together. We'll call that Southeast. Being a Michigan University grad, I'm not a Big Ten guy. I'm not big on the Southeast Conference, but they win enough national championships. Notice Illinois, standalone. Okay, wait a minute, Illinois. This, you had to get a little tricky when you did it, the desktop product. I can do a single value. I could leave it out there. I could say, I want to group it even though it's only one value. I'm going to call it Midwest. Now tell me, as you see me building this, imagine if they're all 50 states in the grouping process versus you doing with a complex if then else statement using the infamous InList feature. All right? Take you forever. I can move things around. Maybe I got one of them in the wrong group. I can immediately click on DC, move it to another group or ungroup it, whatever I want. Okay? And then the old classic question comes up, what about ungroup values? Guess what? They've covered that too. And talk about intuitive. So if they're ungrouped, what it's going to do, it's going to make just visible. It's going to show the values. I don't want that. I want a catch-all. I want an exception, an else bucket. So I pick automatically grouped. We'll call it others. You can only have one. I've done several webinars over the last year or so with this analysis feature, and I get questions on that. So now I have ungrouped already taken care of. And if I want to change the groups, I can go down here and select the particular one I want to fix. And I could change it instead of West Coast. I could call it Southwest Coast or something, but all easily manageable. I take it all done. I'm all done with it. I come back out, and it dynamically, automatically groups things on the fly, as you see. Man, is that a huge, huge time saver, the kind of things we're looking for. Notice it shows up as a variable. Variables and references are great features in Webby. Those are additional objects that you've added in to your document that you want to carry out through the whole document. So this region that I now define can be used throughout any and all report tabs. I can use it in a chart. I can use it anywhere on any report tab because it's a local variable that we're going to use. If I want to edit it, I don't have to go to the manage group. I can do it right here. Or, Webby said, we'll give it to you the other way. If you highlight the column, then go up to the group button, you can go to manage groups. You can ungroup, remove the selected group, and so on, but we would go to manage groups, and we could manage it all from there. Very nice, very easily. And if you needed to put state back in there, you still could. State's now being redefined as region, so you would still be able to put state in there, drag it into the right, look for a little blue chip connector. And then later on, if I was going to take the region out, I would ungroup it. It would show back up as state. I'd want to remove the extra column there as well. But you have that ability to do that as part of that. So it really makes it nice for us as part of that. All right. Now to get rid of them, want to be careful. Little bit of practical advice. I've run into problems before where if I wanted to remove it, I edit it by double-clicking on the variable here on the left side, opening up the Manage Group window. Sometimes when I ungroup them all, it'll throw an error. And I just do an undo, and I do it a second time, and it picks it up. Don't know why, but it's happened every once in a while, and it's been at multiple customer sites. So just beware of that. So what I do is I go up here when I want to get rid of my groups. I just select Manage Groups from here. And then I go in and say, all right, let's select state and let's ungroup them all. Hopefully we won't have that situation come up. And when I do an OK button there, I'm back to all the original states. Think of the time saving.
Okay, Michael?
Yes.
We had a question come in. They're wondering, when do you use references?
That's part of a calculation. Formulas, variables, and functions, reference cells. A reference cell would be where you could point to this one of these specific cells and name it. I'll just show you real quick here. I wanted to, let me get the grand total actually. Yeah, if I wanted to capture this, I could do a right click. And what I want to do is, where is it? Assign a reference to it. So it comes back and says, give me a name, and I can call it GT for grand total, sales, revenue. We do a real nice job of that in our training in our formulas and variables class section, where you really want to know how to do that, the description box. And what happens is now it's sitting here as grand total sales revenue. So now you can reference the grand total. I can do it for this one as well. And I can use these inside of calculations, or I can just drag it out and drop it on any area of the tab that I want. and there's my value, all right? The reason they did that, I asked Samuel Polachek a long time ago about that. I said, what was your reason for doing that? He said, because people like to put a cover page that's a grand total summary page where they would put the grand totals and maybe just the subtotal values only and be able to directly reference them themselves. So the reference cells, I could do that for quantity sold grand total. Then I could do a subtotal for each one of these and have 2 more for each year for a total of 8 more. And reference cells are basically a variable that's a single value, scalar value. All right. So it's just was built in to give us that kind of reference. So you don't have to use it for subtotals either. You could say, I just want to pick the 405,965 for Florida for sales revenue. I want to capture that specific value. Maybe that's a base state that you want to use their number as kind of the average or something like that. So those are reference cells. Formulas, variables, and functions section that I do a presentation on, you can opportunity to see those as well. You can always drop me a note on that, and I can follow up with you as well. So, all right, so now let's take a look at what we've done. We've used our breaks, very powerful. We did our ranking. We did some sorting on the date columns itself. Usually breaks and sorts you tend to see working together. We threw in a group just to show you some of the great functionality that's available there. Now what we need to look at is we need to look at the local filter button here. So if you notice, this report is all 4 years. Okay, let me go down to the bottom, double click on it, call it all 4 years. Just a reminder to people, since we're running in the HTML version of Webby 4.2, at least you better be, 4.3 and above. If you're on the query panel side, you can't double click into the tab, you have to do a right click rename. But here, when I'm on the report viewer side of the shop, I can double click on any tab that I want, and there you go. This is going to duplicate it just a couple times. I duplicate the report, and I duplicate the report again. And what we'll do is we'll take the first duplicated one, and we're going to call that one 2019. 2019. And remember, stay away from special characters. Tabs do not like that. Characters, numbers, and spaces. And what if we did a 2018 for this one? Okay. And so on the 2019 tab, I only want 2019 data. Maybe I'm going to customize the look of this particular report because this is the most current year that we have out there. Okay. Well, how am I going to do that? I can't do a query filter up front because that'll restrict the data for the entire document. I want a local filter within this block within this particular column. So all I got to do is highlight that column in a good old analysis toolbar. Here it is, one of the big 3. Select the filter button and said, which years do you want? Maybe just 19 only for this particular example. And when you're inside the report filter window, it builds it up here. You work down here, but you can also click the add to add another one. You can delete that one or delete them all. So it's got its own self-contained little environment. It's even got the nested feature here, which is called the nested filter. So if you're doing ands and ors together, you can take care of those as well. Remember, ands and ors are done a little differently in HTML version. So now I only got 2019 data. But what if I went to 18? Did the same thing. I could apply it, click in the column, select the filter button, and I'm going to select only a 2018. You have to be careful where you do this for a very good reason, and here's the reason why. All right, I'm applying it against that block on that tab. So if I build another report on the right, that local filter is not going to touch it. If I would have clicked on the white tab area here and then done the same identical filter, it would become a block level for the vertical table block. I would have selected for that, and it would have done it for actually on the 2018 tab as it is. That's what I would do it on, and anything I drop onto that tab will automatically be filtered. So I would not want to select the vertical table. Make sure I clarify that the right way. What if I wanted a second filter? I could go over here to state, and I do have the ability to add another filter there for state, and maybe I only want California and Colorado and Florida for those. I can add those 2 in, and lo and behold, there you go. So there's your local filters to divide it, subdivide it all up, all right? So really, really nice using the local filtering across the board. Charts and reports work the same way. The thing about local filters you got to be really careful about, and I do mean really careful about, is they're hidden. You don't see them. So if you look at this report right now, you know there must be a filter on year. You're deducing that. It must be a filter on state. We don't see the filter, but it's behind the scenes. So over on the left side, let's take a quick look down the line, right below available objects. a feature called Document Structure and Filter. We had that in the old Desky days as well. And if you select the 2019 tab that we're on, 18 tab, further down, you can open it all up. You'll notice down in here, it shows you, as long as you're on the filter side, exactly what you've got. Now, what if I decided to hide the state column? Let me just do a quick hide, just to show you real quick. I want to hide the column here as well. And now it's hidden. So what it shows you on the left side are actually two things. It shows you all of your local filters relative to this vertical table. If I went up one level to 2018 tab, it would have shown me the tab level filters. Local filters, not global. All right. And then it tells me that state is grayed out, meaning it's hidden. So now I know exactly what's going on. So little things like that you don't think about are all beneficial for you, and it's nice to have those as well. So you can see as we look across the way, when we get into the analysis tab, automatically filters is going to become filtering and breaking and sorting. This is going to be automatic, those three. I didn't even touch on calculations. Those are applied just by highlighting a particular column. Let's go back to the all years one just for a second here. And I could apply, for example, the sales revenue. There's already a sum, and if I wanted, I could do things like a percentage. Apply that as well, and I get all the automated percentages and stuff. It's a very good feature as well. So you can see how powerful that analysis tab is. You got to get your base report built, and then starting left to right, figure out how do I want to organize. Organizing things would be grouping or breaking them, and then the grouping would be allowing me to dynamically subset it even further into custom groups for analysis. They can automatic roll-ups as well. But keep an eye on this tab. This is so powerful. In 4.3, for those of you that eventually will move over there, it's a little ways out yet. It's over on the left side here. There's a couple of things on the right end, a couple categories that get displayed that where you'll be working it over on the right side. So just got to get our eyes looking in a different place. But the same functionality, you don't have to worry, you'll see in 4.3 later on as well for that. All right, we're getting close to the end. I want to give you at least a couple minutes for questions. Anybody have any questions out there? Let me pop up my contact information in case you want to talk to me about handouts.